Any other? Yes.
Just, I'm out. 235 Glen.
The Colemanses submitted a letter to the board. Dear Mr. Adela, we are residents of 233 Glen Road. We are writing concerning the condition of 235 Glen Road, which has a new owner as of last week. The long, narrow property has two very large dead trees and one dying in the rear of the lot. These overlook the garden that we work and pose a danger to us on a daily basis. We'd like to request a planning board order about not touching the vegetation be modified to allow the property to be cleaned up with the immediate emphasis on the dead trees. If there's any question, perhaps a site visit would help. Basically, this property has been neglected for over 15 years because most of it is in the sun, poison ivy, and numerous invasive plants that can flourish. Dense foliage also provides a haven for small animals that invade our garden and carry ticks. So you have some pictures in your little packets there. So Mr. and Mrs. Cummins came in and talked with me about it. I checked the file for 235 Glen Road, and it was a planning board site plan approval. There was a limit of work and no touch zone. The property has not been acted upon, and basically there are a couple of significant dead trees.
Isn't there a sunset date on our conditions?
I can double check that.
I mean, if nobody's done anything on the site, then at some point are our conditions no longer applicable? Because we reviewed this one.
Years
Gosh,
ago.
yeah.
Wasn't this the Brothers of Joseph or some such?
Well, it was a young guy and his wife and child. That's what I remember.
I disagree.
The Board of Health has, and the fire department have condemned the property.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't really look like a house anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but the guy who now bought it as of a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, says he can't do anything until the planning board releases him.
I think we
I can go back and look at the decision, but
what if nobody does anything? You know,
Well, if he wants to do something,
he's got to come back.
he just needs to come to us and talk about what he wants to
In
do.
the meantime, these people are getting overrun by. I mean, it looks like.
Yeah,
So
we're the victims,
The
he's not.
No, I understand that.
Does he want to cut it down, or the stuff?
He
Or?
told Wendy that he was concerned for his own safety, but he obviously didn't show up, or, you know, but I don't think he cares about us.
Well, the question is, I mean, obviously, we're not interested in preserving dead trees and poison ivy. That's not in our interest.
I would think so.
However, you know, if we release him, how do we know he's not going to just clear cut the whole thing?
Well, you know what, almost at this point, there's maybe 5 trees that are worth saving in the front, but
Yeah, but then there's these
the rest of
but
it is
then
gone
there's the
to pot.
rhododendrons and stuff that are in this picture.
It's a scenic grove, so you just can't come in and totally clear cut. But you could clear cut the bad vegetation and the dead trees.
I'm just trying to think. We've never encountered this situation before.
Well, you know what, can he come in and
No,
talk
generally
with
they clear cut
Betsy?
a lot, and
and
then-
maybe-
That's very unusual.
yeah, but what happens if he decides not to put it?
Well, we can't force him to
We
cut
can't
stuff
force
down.
it, right, that's
Could we,
true
could
too.
the
Yeah, but
building
at least
inspector
I can
just
write,
enforce
if he's
it?
released, I can write a letter to him saying he's responsible for any damage done to my property. At the moment, I can't, you know, he's not free to clean it.
Well, I think Al's point is well taken. I mean, there's got to be a sunset provision on these, and I actually
Well,
thought it was
it's
2 years.
site plan review, so it's 2 years.
It's 2 years.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
So
more
it's
than
no
2 years.
longer
right.
valid.
It's no longer valid. So
Right.
couldn't the building inspector issue some sort of, you know, supersede our conditions? That's no longer
But that's
valid.
assuming he'll do that.
Well,
We could write him a letter saying these pose a danger.
yeah. And our conditions have lapsed because nobody's done anything
Right.
on the property for over
Okay.
2 years.
Okay.
Yes.
I know your special
Could you
permit,
identify yourself?
Jonathan White. Just a question, I know your special permits are good for 2 years. I've always been uncomfortable with how long your site plan approval does last. I don't Does it say anything in the bylaws about how long that lasts?
Doesn't that run with the property?
It does run with the property.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought.
Yeah.
Even if nobody does anything, because
Yeah.
we've never encountered a situation where.
No,
we
we've always
issue-
had people go against the site plan approval by doing something, yeah.
But we've never had somebody who
No.
just didn't do anything.
Right.
Uh,
But he just bought this thing.
No, but the guy that we issued the.
Right, he's long gone.
He's long gone.
He's long
It
gone.
still-
But this
it still
gentleman
runs
just
with
bought it a
property,
week
runs
ago.
with
He
deed.
probably hasn't
Yeah.
got any idea what's going on yet.
The original guy sold it to
I
the,
can't
Building
understand
permit,
it. It's
yeah.
not.
Unless you get an
Oh,
extension.
Our
yeah,
site plan
well,
approval, though,
It's 2
runs
years.
perpetual.
All right,
it was
so
not the
it's-
first guy that got the
We're
permit.
getting
It
hung
was
up on
the cult.
technicalities.
Yeah.
If
Who's owned it for a long time,
Yeah.
they tore it down 90%, you should
Right.
see in the pictures, and then walked away.
If the,
Get this out.
if the planning board's conditions are still in effect, you're not gonna find it tonight. You'll have to do
No,
some
I'm just
digging.
seeing if this, okay.
If it's still in effect, then we would have to we would vote to say that we would permit clearing of a certain kind on the site and ask the building inspector to enforce that decision with the current owner.
Wouldn't we have to be specific about that?
We'd have to make a sidewalk.
It sounds to me like it's just dead ash trees and invasives.
Maybe, do you want to go out and look and just be sure?
I would like to suggest that you wear armor if you do make
Yeah.
a sidewalk.
Yeah, maybe that would be enough, just to look at the.
Yeah.
at-
Just drive up
You
and
can
take a
see
look.
it
You can
from
still
my
walk up.
property,
Yeah.
and you can see it, some of it from above, but 241 Glen has also been condemned. And it's tricky, you know.
If our conditions are no longer in effect because there is some sort of a sunset provision, then it would be simply a matter of kicking it over to the building inspector for some sort of enforcement.
But is it enforcement, or, I mean, can we tell a new landowner that they must do the following? Or is it just like, we're informing you that you have permission to take down invasives and tree?
All right, again,
Yeah.
if our conditions are
It's the
still in
latter
effect.
rather than the former.
If our conditions are still in effect, then we would have to vote on a change to the conditions.
Right.
And that would have to be specific, and then we would send that to the owner with a copy to the building inspector and establish some sort of compliance date in our conditions, say you've got to do this within the next 30 days or something like that. And then if that didn't happen, then kick it over to the building inspector for enforcement. That's plan number one. Plan number two is if our conditions have in fact lapsed, if Betsy finds that that's the case, since nothing's been done, then we would write a letter to the building inspector saying that this is actually creates some sort of a
Hazard.
hazard,
Attractive nuisance.
whatever term you want to use, and strongly suggest to the building inspector that he have the owner address this by clearing the nuisance from
So
the property.
We're voting to modify our special permit then? And
We didn't issue a
No, it
special
wasn't.
permit,
What was
it's a
it?
site plan
The
review.
site
Okay,
plan
we're-
review for
We're voting to
construction on a
modify our
scenic
site
road.
plan review and asking
A
its owner.
determination first
No,
about
there-
whether or not it's in effect,
It-
or whether
that's
it's
right.
elapsed.
There are
Okay,
two avenues. One avenue is if our conditions are still in effect,
mhm,
then we would have to vote on to change.
I get
And
that.
then
Okay.
number two is if they're not in effect,
Mhm.
then we wouldn't have to vote on anything.
right.
We just send a letter to the building inspector saying to have the guy get rid of this stuff.
And that is my question, is that within our board purview?
We couldn't order him to do it,
I
but
mean,
we could
that's
just
what I'm
strongly
asking.
suggest it.
Yeah, we can't order anybody to do that, clear the park.
We
Building
can't.
inspector order him,
If he finds that it's a attractive
If it's a
nuisance
danger,
or a
right.
danger, he can do
The
that.
structure, this is the picture of the structure.
I'm not complaining
That
about the
can be
structure,
taken.
they're complaining about the trees.
I know,
tree
but-
volume.
And the poison
That
ivy,
far,
that's a
yeah.
danger. A lot of people are really severely
Right.
Yeah, but that's-
affected by poison ivy. So
Okay.
that's-
I just want to be clear, we're not ordering anybody to do this, we are,
we could order the current owner to clear it up if our
If-
decision is still in
okay,
effect.
right, okay.
But we
I
don't know
think
that
it'd
yet.
be a very good idea for the new owner to come and have a conversation with the town planner.
The
can't
Board
order
of Health
to do that.
already
No.
told him to do something, and apparently nothing happened, so I don't know.
Well, how long's he owned it for?
What?
How long's he owned it for?
Oh, it's been around, but he lives next door.
Okay.
And he's been around a couple of years now, so, I mean, he's not new to the process.
Anyway, if,
That would be the best, then.
why don't we do this? Let's assume that our conditions are still in effect. And assign Kim.
What property is this?
It's
It was before your time.
our landscape
Two
architect
thirty-five Glen Road.
You'll enjoy it.
to go out and look at the site and see if there's anything on the site that's worth preserving.
There's just a few big trees in the front and one or two way in the back.
Okay,
And we're
well,
that's
protected
it.
here.
and then when we get your recommendations, we'll take a vote on that, if our conditions are still in effect. So at least we're moving in some direction. Is that okay with everybody?
That sounds like a plan.
Thank you.